Welcome to your week in review here on WINN FM 98.9 for the period May 12th through 17th. Making the news last week, advancing border security, St. Kitts and Nevis passes groundbreaking ETA amendment bill. IMF Executive Board concludes 2025 Article 4 consultation with St. Kitts and Nevis.
Simulation exercises to get underway in preparation for the 2025 hurricane season. Prime Minister Gonzalez opposes the CBI. Drew acknowledges uncertainties and highlights the government's plan to preserve SKN's CBI program.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis accuses MSR Media of attempted extortion over documentary threat. Environment and Climate Action Minister highlights implications of upcoming Global Sustainable Islands Summit. Youth engagement takes spotlight ahead of Global Sustainable Islands Summit in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, the details. In a move that marks a new era for national security and border management, the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis passed the Advanced Passenger Information and Passenger Name Amendment Bill 2025 on Thursday, May 15th. The Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, Minister of National Security, hailed the legislation as a foundational component in the Federation's effort to establish a secure and efficient, technologically advanced border control system. Prime Minister Drew described the bill as a bold stride into the future of secure, seamless, and smart border management, emphasizing the government's decision and dedication to protecting national security while enhancing the travel experience for legitimate visitors. The bill strengthens the legal and operational frameworks supporting the rollout of the Federation's Electronic Travel Authorization (ETA) system, scheduled to launch in June 2025. The amendment to the original Act number 32 of 2024 introduced provisions enabling real-time multi-layered screening of travelers. This system requires the simultaneous submission of passenger data to both the local competent authority and the CARICOM Implementation Agency for Crime and Security (IMPACS), ensuring that St. Kitts and Nevis aligns itself with global standards established by the International Civil Aviation Organization and the International Air Transport Association, as well as the World Customs Organization. The bill further ensures legal accountability for all commercial carriers by preventing exemptions based on technical or commercial grounds. Travelers from visa-exempt countries can apply online before arrival, undergo biometric and AI-driven risk assessments, and receive a secure digital travel credential. Upon arrival, passengers will proceed swiftly through biometric corridors, eliminating the need for traditional paper forms or long immigration lines. Prime Minister Drew reiterated the bill's significance, stressing that it is a technological upgrade and a national development milestone. He highlighted the benefits recognized in other countries using similar technology.
This does not put any extra burden on our people. Madam Speaker, I want to say that this is not a guess in bringing this system. In Seychelles, where the same technology is deployed, drug mule interceptions surged, forged identity detections increased, and GDP growth was fueled by post-COVID tourism recovery. St. Kitts and Nevis stands to gain.
The Prime Minister made clear the government's vision for the Federation to be recognized as a destination that is both friendly and secure, pointing to Seychelles as a regional benchmark where the ETA platform
has led to increased tourism, detection of drug smugglers, and faster airport processing times. St. Kitts and Nevis is set to lead the Caribbean in secure, smart travel. We are moving ahead of the line, Madam Speaker. The implementation of the ETA is a border management upgrade and a national development milestone, ensuring that our borders remain safe, open, and globally competitive.
Illustrating the government's holistic approach to national security, Drew added,
a whole of government, whole of society approach. The passage of these amendments demonstrates the National Assembly's role as a proactive partner in the government's whole of society strategy to treat with crime, violence, and transnational threats as matters of public health and national development. Madam Speaker, this is also part of our citizen security. We want to strengthen our borders. We want to know who coming into St. Kitts.
He emphasized the multiple benefits.
The benefits that we'll have with respect to economic growth are obvious, but we also want to make obvious the benefits to our national security system here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So this is a leap forward.
Prime Minister Drew tied these legislative reforms to the broader national agenda.
By integrating legal oversight, digital innovation, and border control into a single framework, this Parliament is strengthening the architecture that supports our sustainable island state agenda, our economic diversification through tourism. Again, all these things are to ensure we create the environment for economic diversification, so we don't have to depend on one sector so heavily.
Reaffirming the government's commitment to inclusive governance, he declared,
"We are not just legislating in abstraction. We are legislating to secure our borders, stimulate our economy, and signal to the world that St. Kitts and Nevis is prepared, modern, and sovereign."
The bill ensures the lawful processing and protection of personal data while empowering authorities to respond promptly and intelligently to threats.
This moment demands that we legislate not just for today's needs, but for tomorrow's challenges.
Following the bill's passage, the federal cabinet, led by Prime Minister Drew, visited the Electronic Travel Authorization System unit on Thursday to observe preparations for the June rollout. The visit underscored the government's dedication to the infrastructure and operational readiness necessary for this transformational step in border security and travel facilitation. Echoing the importance of aligning with international standards, Tourism and Aviation Minister, the Honourable Marcia Henderson, voiced her strong support for the bill.
It's critical in the international standards for aviation, which aims to promote the efficient and secure movement of people and goods across borders. Its primary objective is to foster cooperation among states, to facilitate lawful international travel and trade, while simultaneously enhancing border security and preventing illegal activities such as human trafficking, terrorism, and smuggling.
Minister Henderson further shared insights from recent international engagements.
We were in Qatar, I think about a month ago, and we were discussing with IQ the 17th edition of Annex 9. So Annex 9 continues to evolve with the changes in the sector, and we're now on the 17th edition of Annex 9. They have indicated that they intend to do an audit of St. Kitts and Nevis to determine how compliant we are, Madam Speaker, with the new changes made to Annex 9. I think we're scheduled for the audit sometime later this year, early next year. I'm happy, however, to report that we're 80% compliant. And by the time we would be audited, I'm pretty certain with these amendments that we would be ready. 100% compliant.
She highlighted critical components of the latest Annex 9 update.
The recent updates in the 17th edition of Annex 9 introduced significant enhancements, especially concerning the collection and protection of passenger data. These changes are driven, of course, like I said earlier, by the evolving nature of global threats and technological advancements demanding that we strengthen our facilitation measures. Key aspects of the new edition, which is the 17th edition of Annex 9, which I say is our Bible in the aviation world, emphasizes standardized procedures for collecting passenger data, including biographical and travel information to support security screening, immigration control, and border management. This ensures that the data is gathered efficiently and accurately, facilitating timely risk assessments.
Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs Garth Wilkin explained the bill's amendments' practical effect, particularly in complying with international standards and streamlining affected protocols.
In other words, Madam Speaker, this is a whole new concept. It was a CARICOM model bill originally, which we were the first to pass in the region, and we are going to be the first to implement ETA in the region. So the reason why we're coming back after passing the original act around 6 months ago is because things are moving quickly And we had a refinement process and a review process by Trevisory and our immigration team, as well as the team at Aviation and Maritime. And these are the amendments we need to be able to trigger the ETA and refine the bill.
These changes solidify the country's place within an evolving international security framework to foster safe and efficient travel across borders. The new legislation also supports the operational readiness of the ETA digital platform, a pivotal tool that pre-screens travelers before arrival. This platform will enhance data quality, timelines, and reliability, enabling predictive analytics and expedited immigration processing. The International Monetary Fund's Executive Board has completed its 2025 Article 4 consultation with St. Kitts and Nevis, and the government has approved the publication of the staff report. The consultation outlines the country's economic landscape, which includes a modest post-pandemic recovery coupled with significant fiscal and structural challenges. Despite a robust rebound after the pandemic, the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis experienced a slight slowdown in 2024, with real GDP growth moderating to 1.5%. This deceleration, primarily due to weaker contributions from the tourism sector and government services, does not overshadow the overall resilience of the economy. Inflation eased to around 1%, influenced by lower global commodity prices and subdued economic activity. Tourism remains pivotal, with stayover visitors nearly back at pre-pandemic levels, although cruise ship arrivals have yet to fully recover. For 2025, the IMF projects a modest pickup to 2% growth, driven largely by expanding tourism activity. Over the medium term, growth is expected to rise to about 2.5%, underpinned by significant energy projects, particularly in renewable sources. Despite positive growth prospects, the fiscal health of the Federation faces significant hurdles. The fiscal deficit widened sharply to 11% of GDP in 2024, predominantly due to a steep decline in Citizenship by Investment (CBI) program revenues, from 22% of GDP in 2023 to just 8% in 2024, following recent reforms aimed at enhancing due diligence and program integrity. This substantial revenue drop, underperformance in the corporate income taxes, and sustained current expenditures have strained public finances. Although government deposits dropped to 10% of GDP, gross public debt was relatively contained at 52% in 2024. However, without corrective measures, public debt is projected to escalate to over 70% of GDP by 2030, raising concerns about fiscal sustainability and sovereign debt stress risks. The authority's 2025 budget anticipates a narrower deficit of around 4% of GDP, partly based on an optimistic rebound in CBI revenue and planned expenditure controls. Nonetheless, the IMF staff projects the deficit to remain at 10% of GDP for 2025, attributing much of this to structurally lower CBI inflows and fiscal pressures from current expenditures. Notably, a temporary reduction in the standard VAT rate from 17% to 13%, along with a social support program, is expected to incur additional fiscal costs in early 2025. Despite the acknowledgement of fiscal deficits projected to continue, St. Kitts and Nevis and much of the Caribbean struggle to access concessionary loans to alleviate some of the financial pressures and fund initiatives that would, in the long run, improve the Federation's or the region's fiscal position. During the May 13th, 2025 broadcast of the Roundtable, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, pointed to these issues following the 2025 IMF World Bank Spring meeting in April.
Presently, to access concessionary funding or get certain grants, they would look at your GDP per capita. For St. Kitts and Nevis, we have a high GDP per capita, and so we can't get access to certain concessionary loans and grants, so we are excluded from certain programs. Our argument to them is that we might have a high GDP per capita, but we are very small. Our economy, our GDP is about $3 billion, 3 point something billion dollars. That's easy. That's just over 1 point something billion US dollars. Very, very small. So even though the per capita is high, our ability to implement significant transformational projects, that ability is hampered by the fact that we have an overall small GDP, though the GDP per capita is high. The GDP is the total, and per capita mean divided by population. We have a small population. So therefore, our GDP per capita will reflect high. Yet, to implement, for example, geothermal, you know how much the geothermal cost? Total cost might be $400 million US dollars. That's already, if you convert, that's already a big part of our total GDP, just one project, right? The hospital, for example, look, let's say it costs overall a couple $100 million EC dollars. That's already about a quarter of our annual budget, but we need it. So we are saying to them, don't just look at our GDP per capita. Look at our vulnerability. Because though our GDP per capita is high, if we get a major hit by a hurricane, that gone down the drain. The CBI totally disappear overnight with nothing to replace it, that gone down the drain. And therefore, we are very vulnerable. That is why we have to rush towards a sustainable island state, to take away this vulnerability, to become more resilient. And so, yes, that was put forward. And the MDVI has been accepted at some levels. And so we are seeing advancement with that. So SIDS are being looked at. So this is being accepted more and more. But we want it to be fully accepted.
The financial system exhibits mixed signals. Private banks have improved by reducing non-performing loans, NPLs, and strengthening capital adequacy. However, vulnerabilities persist. Credit growth surged by 10% in 2024, fueled by strong demand for mortgage loans and rising competition. Credit unions, albeit smaller, experienced even faster expansion, with concerns over elevated delinquency rates. The Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis remains fragile, suffering from high NPLs, weak capital, and inadequate regulatory oversight, creating a contingent fiscal liability. The IMF underscores the urgency of financial sector reforms, encouraging ongoing efforts to bolster bank sector resilience, reduce NPL ratios, and enhance regulatory frameworks, particularly for credit unions. Establishing a sovereign wealth fund to manage CBI revenues is regarded as a positive step aimed at smoothing fiscal revenue volatility stemming from the program. The consultation highlights deeper structural economic issues. Potential growth has gradually declined over recent decades, mainly due to sluggish productivity gains and diminishing human capital contributions. Labor market mismatches, including skill shortages in private sectors such as tourism and healthcare, complicate competitiveness. In response, the government has initiated efforts to align education and vocational training with market demands, aiming to counteract these trends and foster inclusive growth. The energy transition is a pillar of the country's medium-term strategy. Large renewable energy projects, including a transformative geothermal initiative advancing towards the drilling phase, are expected to enhance energy security, reduce costs, and stimulate economic diversification. This transition presents significant upside potential for growth, competitiveness, and fiscal revenues. Given St. Kitts and Nevis's high vulnerability to natural disasters, the IMF stresses investment in resilient infrastructure and an enhanced multi-layered insurance framework. Key recommendations include integrating disaster-resilient projects into the public investment program, upgrading the power grid to connect the two islands via renewable energy sources, and expanding water infrastructure through desalination plants and well development. These measures are vital to mitigate fiscal and economic shocks from future climate events. IMF executive directors commended the authorities' commitment to prudent fiscal and structural reforms amid significant challenges. The board urged a decisive fiscal consolidation to stabilize public debt below the regional ceiling and reduce dependence on volatile CBI revenues. This entails mobilizing tax revenues, controlling current spending, and improving expenditure efficiency through anchored fiscal rules. Efforts to strengthen financial sector stability must continue, with particular emphasis on the Development Bank's restructuring, reducing NPLs, and reinforcing regulatory oversight over credit unions. Further transparency and governance improvements to the CBI program are also critical. Directors highlighted the need to implement structural reforms targeting labor market alignment, improved government service delivery, and enhanced credit access. Accelerating the renewable energy transition is vital for long-term competitiveness. Finally, improving natural disaster preparedness through robust investment and insurance frameworks remain a top priority to safeguard economic resilience. St. Kitts and Nevis stands at a crossroad as it balances challenges arising from fiscal pressures and slower growth against opportunities offered by renewable energy and structural reforms. The IMF consultation underscores a multi-pronged approach: fiscal discipline, financial sector reform, economic diversification, and disaster preparedness to ensure the Federation's sustainable and resilient development amid global uncertainties. It is important to note that these staff report projections are based on the information available as of March 27, 2025. Therefore, they do not reflect the impact of trade tensions since April 2, 2025, and all other implications following various pauses and deals.
Residents of St. Kitts and Nevis should expect at least one of several simulation exercises ahead of the official start to the 2025 transatlantic hurricane season. The simulation exercises will be preceded on May 14 by a table exercise with officials of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. In 2024, a pop-up simulation exercise sent the public into a frenzy, especially as talks circulated that the Joseph N. France General Hospital was out of power. At his May 13 roundtable discussion with the press, the Prime Minister said such exercises are important to test the country's disaster response mechanisms, and as a result, only a very few people will know when they will occur.
Remember last year when we were doing the simulation? A whole heap of things, no electricity in JNF and all. Well, we're going to see it again this year, and we're not going to announce it. The reason why we don't announce the simulation, we want it to be real. So if a storm hits and the current goes out of JNF, what is the action? If you can't pass on this road, how do you react to it? And we're going to do it again this year. So I hope, and I think the press was informed before, I'm not sure. But hopefully we can inform the press so that the press keeps it a secret. But we don't want people to know, not even some of the workers in the hospital we want to know. So we want a realistic approach. So we're starting with the desk, and we intend to have a number of exercises before the hurricane season starts so that we can be well prepared as a country.
Drew explained that at last year's simulation exercise at the hospital, nobody's life was in danger and nobody was in the intensive care unit nor on life-saving machines. Simulation exercises are in keeping with the agenda of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, to ensure that member states are prepared to respond to any natural disaster and also to enhance the interoperability among partner institutions and emergency personnel. Some forecasting models have hinted at the possibility of storm development before the official start of the 2025 hurricane season. Daily tropical outlooks from the National Hurricane Center will resume on May 15. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Drew reported that while in Washington, meeting with the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio, it was revealed that key emergency support programs will be activated to bolster disaster preparedness and response across the Caribbean. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, has consistently opposed the Citizenship by Investment CBI concept. However, despite his highly publicized rejection of the program, his colleague and Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence Drew, has emphasized its importance to the Federation. At the May 13 roundtable discussion with Prime Minister Drew, a reporter questioned whether he would respond to Gonsalves' heavy criticisms of the CBI program. Prime Minister Drew acknowledged that the CBI program is insecure, particularly as it relates to any potential exogenous shocks. However, Drew said it has done much good for the Federation and he would do whatever he could to protect it.
With respect to Prime Minister Gonsalves, I have not really paid attention to what he has said. But I have said from our perspective with the CBI is that from our perspective, the CBI is a very insecure type of industry. Some because it can be hit by so many different things. It has been good to us in the overall, in the sense that it has helped us to advance a number of critical things here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So CBI has its place, it has its role, and I will do everything to preserve it.
The CBI regime, though a very lucrative market, is not deemed a very favorable program for the Vincentian Prime Minister, who has been holding the office as head of government business since 2001. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the only independent territory in the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, without a CBI program. The program was rescinded when the Unity Labour Party, led by Gonsalves, took office in 2001. In Gonsalves' view, the selling of the passports is wrong in principle. He added that CBI is reckless and unsustainable, could result in visa-free restrictions for the countries with the CBI programs, and may also pose an existential threat to Caribbean democracies. However, St. Vincent and the Grenadines' opposition party, New Democratic Party, should it win the upcoming general elections, constitutionally due in 2026, gave notice that it will reinstate the CBI program. Understanding the uncertainties with the CBI market, Dr. Drew reminded citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis of his government's agenda to diversify the economy and shift to full dependency away from CBI revenues.
While I'm doing everything to preserve it, I have to also be mindful of something my grandmother told me. God bless her soul. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So we have to diversify the economy and become more, of course, sustainable, more resilient. So I have not paid attention to what he has said, but expect to say that St. Kitts and Nevis' position is that we'll do everything to preserve the CBI because the CBI has its place in our national development. However, we will continue to diversify our economy to be more resilient. Because we saw we got a hit with the CBI, and we saw what I reported in the budget, that it affected us. And it is getting better since we change all the laws and make it much stronger, but it is still a very risky type of sector. But so that is why we want to go into energy, expand agriculture, improve tourism, improve our infrastructure to attract industries and so forth, employ technology to be more efficient with what we do so that we don't have wastage. And that is why we are investing in large-scale agriculture, such as the large 110-acre land that we're going to develop in Cayon, which will also grow peppers for the Tabasco program. The fishing, as you know, we have expanded that. The greenhouses that we are expanding and so forth. Tourism, more flights. And we are seeking to get more, of course, ships and so in, expanding that sector. So agriculture, energy, geothermal, renewable energy, infrastructure, water, electricity, internet, all these things that we are doing. And we'll come next year, we are shifting to an e-government. We want to be the first in the Caribbean.
Meanwhile, Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown clapped back at Gonsalves, saying that his remarks at an April 15 press conference in St. Vincent were unfortunate and irresponsible, and also accused Gonsalves of launching a deliberate and provocative attack on OEC states that operate citizenship by investment programs. In Brown's opinion, the Caribbean countries must look after their best interest amidst a global environment where international institutions don't care about small territories.
Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew has publicly accused MSR Media of attempting to extort millions from the government of St. Kitts and Nevis in exchange for withholding the release of a documentary that reportedly casts the country and its citizenship by investment program in a negative light. During the May 13th broadcast of the Roundtable, Prime Minister Drew made the startling allegation, claiming that individuals associated with MSR Media demanded between US $40 million and $100 million to prevent the film's release. Before delving into some details concerning the alleged extortion, Prime Minister Drew reiterated that his administration inherited several CBI-related challenges, including matters involving Russian applicants, the MSR Media Agreement, and Galaxy, all of which predated his term in office.
There is a move to put out a nasty video about our CBI. And people came to my office to ask for $40 to $100 million for that video not to be released. And I tell them no. That is extortion. That is blackmail. Nobody has the right to walk into the Prime Minister's office to blackmail or extort because you want to bring out a nasty, malicious video to attack our country. You don't get 1 cent out of me.
The Prime Minister's remarks suggest that he believes the documentary allegedly produced by MSR Media and its head, Philippe Martinez, is part of a coordinated effort to pressure the government financially. Dr. Drew described receiving a message from an individual claiming to have seen a documentary screening which allegedly features him and several Kittitian citizens.
Somebody went to the screening? A Kittitian? I went to the screening. It is well put together and very compelling. Several of our citizens, including yourself, is featured in it. I recommend that you try to see it for yourself before it goes into the public domain. They're inviting me to go see the screening that MSR has put out with Mr. Martinez. That is why I told you this is a ring. How did this Kittitian get to see the screening of a nasty MSR video against St. Kitts and Nevis and against our CBI program? How? I'm going to deal with this seriously. I'm not taking this lightly. I recommend that you try to see it for yourself before it goes into the public domain. How I going to see it? This is their way of inviting me. It is very damaging. As you are aware, I am only a phone call away. Time is running out and is running out. They're a phone call away. I must call them. Trying to get $40 to $100 million out of me. The ball is in your court. Be safe. I mean, come on. See it here Friday. Send this to me at 5:23 p.m. Yes, I just read it. Yes, he asking about the name. It's about this. I have it right here. It is very, hear them. It is very damaging as you're aware. I am only a phone call away. Time is running out on the release. The ball is in your court.
He read from the message. The Prime Minister expressed outrage over the demand, calling the act extortion of a state and indicating that legal actions are being pursued.
And I've asked the AG. We have secured a law firm of high international reputation. And I'm going to deal with this seriously. This nasty video that MSR want to release on St. Kitts and Nevis by someone who I have already said is a felon and bad actor of bad character will not be able to extort this country. Nor his emissaries will not be able to extort this country. I don't even know if they understand what they have done.
While he did not name specific individuals during the broadcast, Dr. Drew identified MSR Media as the party behind the alleged extortion attempt. This latest development follows what many believed to be the end of the contentious relationship between MSR Media and the St. Kitts and Nevis government. In late March 2025, MSR Media formally withdrew its judicial review claim against the government. The claim, filed in May 2024, was set to be heard by resident judge Her Ladyship Justice Tamara Gill. The withdrawal brought to a close the second of two legal cases initiated by the production company. The first was a high-profile RICO lawsuit filed in the United States District Court in Tampa, Florida in early 2024. That case, which named former Prime Ministers Dr. Denzel Douglas and Dr. Timothy Harris, former head of the Citizenship by Investment Unit Les Khan, current St. Lucia CIU CEO MacLeod Emmanuel, and Caribbean Galaxy's Yin Jin as defendants, was voluntarily dismissed in December 2024. MSR Media cited the legal immunity of several defendants and the anticipated cost and complexity of challenging those immunities as key reasons for abandoning the U.S. suit. Despite the conclusion of both cases, the Prime Minister's latest comments signal that tensions remain high, especially in light of the alleged extortion attempt. MSR Media has not publicly responded to the Prime Minister's accusations or offered clarification regarding the alleged documentary or any related communications. As the government prepares for possible legal action, Dr. Drew vowed to resolve the matter.
This is something that I will fight and fight to the end, because the president must not be set in St. Kitts and Nevis that people can walk into the Prime Minister's office. And the thing is, they didn't just walk in, they asked. I asked that they be checked out. People who you think, would have the best interests of St. Kitts and Nevis, but they had their own self-interest. I've already, and this is not going to stay here. I'm going to take it as far as it must go.
This story remains developing. St. Kitts and Nevis is preparing to welcome global leaders, experts, and sustainability advocates as the Federation takes center stage for the 2025 Global Sustainable Island Summit, scheduled for May 27th to 29th. The summit, a collaborative initiative between the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and Island Innovation, a consultancy specializing in sustainability innovation and development for islands, aims to promote sustainable solutions for island nations worldwide. The event is part of a growing movement to elevate the voices and innovations of small island developing states (SIDS) in the global sustainability dialogue. The 2025 summit will build on the momentum of the recently concluded 2024 Fourth International Conference of Small Island Developing States (SIDS 4), focusing on four key thematic areas: water sustainability and energy nexus, agricultural resilience and climate adaptation, climate health interactions, and geothermal energy. In a recent appearance on In Focus, Minister of Environment and Climate Action, the Honorable Dr. Joyle Clark, and Executive Research Officer Akwanje Robertson shared their expectations and the broader implications of the summit. Minister Clark underscored the global recognition of the Federation's leadership in climate advocacy, noting the presence of high-level international stakeholders participating in the summit.
It's not just for island nations, but for persons who work with island nations and development partners. But that all of these persons are coming to convene in Little St. Kitts for 5 full days on thematic issues that are critical to us says a lot not only about our agenda, it says a lot about the global reach of St. Kitts and Nevis from the voice of our Prime Minister, who has made it clear to the world, I think from COP28 in Dubai, when he shared the stage with the likes of Bill Gates and VP Harris, that we're not looking for handouts, we are looking for partnership. Fast forward 2 years and here we are, a global partnership with many actors. The potential is just exponential.
Robinson echoed her sentiments, highlighting the opportunity for SIDS to influence global climate policy directly.
These people are persons of high influence and high power in the decision-making bodies that cause the changes that we aspire to happen. So if these influential people have a chance to listen to us island nations and small island developing states up close, I think it offers a grand opportunity for them to implement those changes at the tables they sit at.
The summit comes at a time of heightened concern in the global climate space. In 2024, the world broke new temperature records, nearing the critical 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold outlined in the Paris Agreement. The agreement itself has faced renewed uncertainty following the second withdrawal of financial support by the United States, a move viewed by many climate advocates as a setback in the collective fight against climate change. Despite such challenges, island nations like St. Kitts and Nevis remain at the front line of climate action, often pioneering innovative adaptation and mitigation strategies. The upcoming summit will provide a key platform for SIDS to demonstrate leadership, share best practices, and seek actionable commitments for international stakeholders. With just 2 weeks to go, preparations are ongoing to ensure the summit amplifies the voices of island nations and catalyzes meaningful global partnerships and progress on sustainability goals. As preparations accelerate for the Island Youth Forum, set to be a pivotal satellite event during the Global Sustainable Islands Summit, GSIS, from May 27th to 29th, Minister of Environment, the Honorable Dr. Joel Clark, has highlighted the vital role young people play in the climate conversation. In stressing the imperative nature of youth engagement, Dr. Clark articulated the need for young voices to be fully integrated and heard in shaping climate policies.
The increasing global youth advocacy for environmental matters is clear. And in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have champions in almost every NGO, every school, and persons who are incredibly passionate.
Highlighting the Federation's approach since assuming office in 2022, Dr. Clark elaborated on the concrete measures taken to empower youth beyond symbolic inclusion.
If young people are to show increased passion and willingness to stand up for the environment, then as adults, we have to give them spaces to talk, to be part of the conversation, and to manage what's happening now, and not necessarily in a tokenistic way, but that they're resourced, that they are part of our delegation, which has happened since we took office in 2022, and it always has a good component of young persons, male and female, and they do everything from negotiating to participating in sessions and leading their own conversations.
Her remarks underscored the urgency of nurturing a new generation of environmental advocates prepared to carry forward the sustainability mission.
When we leave, somebody has to take up the baton, and they're not going to do it naturally if we don't create the opportunity for them to do so. So in our ministry, we're very young, but it's the youth energy that we need to really push this agenda. And every time they engage, they're learning, they're becoming advocates.
The Island Youth Forum, scheduled to run alongside the main summit agenda, aims to bring together young leaders from island communities globally and foster dialogue, collaboration, and innovation on sustainable development challenges unique to islands. In a related development, St. Kitts and Nevis recently welcomed the Republic of China Taiwan as a platinum strategic sponsor for GSIS 3. Minister Clark appreciated the diplomatic and collaborative ties underpinning this partnership and highlighted cross-collaboration between the two countries to fulfill the Federation's National Sustainable Island State Agenda, SISA. The GSIS 3 event, co-hosted by the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and Island Innovation, continues to gather momentum and international support. It aims to advance sustainability and climate resilience initiatives specific to island states through expert discussions, youth engagement, and collaborative forums addressing key themes such as water sustainability, energy transition, and agricultural resilience. As the Federation positions itself as a leader in sustainable development and conference tourism, the inclusion and empowerment of youth remain central pillars to ensuring a resilient and thriving future for the island community and beyond. You were listening to the Week in Review here on WINN FM 98.9. Thank you for listening and have a productive week.